What's up, everybody, and welcome to And Action episode 58. This is the filmmaking podcast where we talk about a little bit of everything. I'm here with my faithful co-host, Mikey Messier. And this week, we're talking all about stage combat. How do you make those fight scenes look violent and realistic while nobody gets hurt? It's a little bit of a magic trick. We're going to be getting into all that and more and talking about some fun stories in the world of film and fights. And also, if you're listening to this right now, you can hear our new theme song, which was put together by a very talented artist by the name of Linus Powers. We're very excited to have Linus's theme song kicking off the show this week. So we're rocking out. It's a Tuesday. The week isn't quite in the middle, but it's not quite over, but it's not the beginning. We're working our way through the week. And we're going to throw some big haymakers at you today, talking all about these fights. So let's fade this wonderful theme out. Thank you, Linus, for
Thanks, Linus.
putting that together. And we're going to be kicking off and probably closing the show with that every week now. So fun to have a little music. Mike, how you doing? You know, Mike and I both had some very harmless disasters in the last day. Mike, you kick off and tell everyone your harmless disaster, and then I'll tell everyone my harmless disaster that happened.
Very, very harmless, Tommy, and I'm sure it's just a temporary situation that the home front has a water stoppage. We just don't have running water, and luckily for you, me, and everybody, this occurred right after I freshly showered and shaved this morning. So I got my gimmicks in, so to speak. I got my activities in just before the water went out, but one of those things that make you thankful. You know, we live in a world and a country and a society where we have running water, indoor plumbing, refrigeration, electricity, all these things that the Thomas Edisons and the Alexander Graham Bells and everybody that they stole their copyrights from, worked so hard to provide us. So when you do have a lack of something, you sometimes appreciate when you do have it.
Well, shout out to the inventors out there who over 100 years ago made those things happen. My mini disaster, harmless disaster. I'm sitting here in the office and I hear a loud noise. I was mowing my own lawn all summer long, and things just got crazy in the last couple weeks. I hate to make excuses, but I just wasn't able to get to it, man. And my backyard turned into fucking Jurassic Park. In a matter of a couple weeks. It's crazy. I don't know if it was all the rain or what it was, but shit just grew. So my neighbor is actually a landscaper. And I just went over there. I was like, hey man, can you do me a favor? I obviously paid him and, just clean up the yard because I'm just swamped right now. He did it, thankfully. And as he's doing it, I just hear this loud crack in my porch. And I'm in a porch here. This is the famous porch. And it's obviously all glass windows. I hear a loud noise, and then I hear the guy just I hear him going fuck, motherfucker, this fucking thing, this fucking house, this fuck. And he's swearing like crazy outside. And I'm saying to myself, because I don't know about the incident yet, I'm saying right. Man, you really get down. You're really hard on yourself while you're just mowing the lawn. Why are you getting so edgy over this? And then I looked at my window and I saw a giant, I'm talking about a 6 foot by 3 foot window, shattered, just spidered out. Looks like it's about to bubble up and crumble in any moment. So we had the glass guy in today. He took some measurements. We're gonna get it fixed. It's not a big deal. But these are just kind of the funny little little things that happen to you throughout the day that you didn't plan on happening, buddy.
Was it a rock or something I caught in his mower and the rock spewed out into your?
He was he was actually edging the beds with a weed whacker type device and whacked a rock right into the fucking window. And I felt bad for the guy. He's such a nice guy. And he was just man, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've never done anything like this. I broke a screen door one time, and he was upset. And I was just like, hey man, I'm sorry, it happens, and he took care of it. So, but enough about our harmless disasters. We are here, Mike, to talk about a very fun topic. Everybody loves a good fight, right? There's an old phrase. This is a cool phrase. You ready for this? It's a cool kind of quote-ish saying. If you've got a large group of people at a park and there's a baseball game happening on one end of the park and there's a basketball game happening at the other end of the park, if a fight breaks out in the middle of the park, everybody from the basketball game and the baseball game are going to rush over and watch it because
Right.
there's something wired inside of us as humans, whether we like it or not. We want to watch a fight. We want to look at it. There's something kind of provocative. There's something that kind of draws us to that kind of animalistic, what have you. So we're talking all about fights because we love to see fights in our movies, right? We're coming off of an action movie. I just did a movie called The Collective, which you can check out right now, and that movie is loaded with fights. So I'm fresh for this topic because I'm coming off of by far my most action-packed film to date, Mike.
Well, there was a great fight, like I mentioned last week, with Tyrese Gibson's character and Mercedes Monet's character, the wrestler formerly known as Sasha Banks. I thought that was a real highlight of the collective myself. And you're right, Tommy. You know, just last night I made a point of watching a replay of Terrence Crawford decimating this. I believe the guy's name was Sean Evans in the unification fight, and great display by Crawford. And UFC, I pretty much watched that every weekend, and of course pro wrestling. And you know, when I was a kid, Tommy, I used to go to hockey games a lot with my father, and we'd go see the Philadelphia Flyers and the Washington Capitals play. A lot of times there would be more fights in the stands than there would be in the actual game between the players, because those Flyers fans would come in from Philadelphia to Landover, Maryland, and you'd have fights in the stands, you know. And as a 12-year-old kid, this was very exciting. So nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd, and a crowd loves a good fight.
Well said, brother. Well said. So let's get into the nitty gritty. So, you know, it's all about making it look violent and nasty. Well, nobody gets hurt. There's no marks on anybody's faces unless they're applied by the special effects makeup artist. And how you do that, really, it comes down to a lot of optical illusions, magic tricks, if you will. The biggest thing is what I'm always shocked by when I make a movie is it's all about finding the right camera angles, because angles are everything when you're filming a fight. You'd be surprised in a lot of these fight sequences, some of the most vicious and nastiest punches I've ever seen thrown on camera happen in such a way where the punch never even comes, like, I'm not kidding, like a foot and a half away from the face of the actor because of where you position your people, so to speak. Whereas, you know, a lot of times, and I'm not going to draw a diagram of this, but, you know, if you have the camera to the back of the actor that's throwing the punch, and the actor that's featured getting hit in the face or wherever is in the foreground, is in the background, like I said, you could be like a foot away from the person and it looks like you're landing nasty and hard. So it's one of those things where it's all about angles to keep people safe. We're going to be getting into a bunch of other ways to keep people safe. Obviously, pads are a big deal. You know, that was one thing when I first started making movies. I was shocked to realize how many of these actors and stunt performers, you'd never notice it on camera, but their whole body is padded up. You know, they've got a lot of these like really sleek pieces of gear. You know, it's almost like picture like a catcher's chest protector, but very sleek and, you know, really thin material, but still like tough. Sometimes these things are practically like, you know, made of Kevlar, the idea of like a bulletproof vest. And those pads are, although they're small, they absorb a lot of the shock, and you can hide them. Actors will hide them in their jacket. They'll hide them in a, you know, pair of pants. You could have a butt pad. You could have thigh pads, knee pads, shin pads. All these different pads are hidden underneath the costume. So, you know, a little consideration when you're making an action movie. Think about, you know, that's a costume thing. You know, I've run into this before where it's like, we wanted to do something really nasty and badass and violent, but the actor's got a tank top on or very little nothing, or, you know, it's a female actor and she has essentially a sports bra on. And it's like, well, shit, you can't really hide a pad in a sports bra or in a tiny tank top. So what do you do? Well, that's one of those things where in the prep process, when you're thinking of your actor's wardrobe, if you know that an actor is going to do a really big stunt where they're, you know, requires them to maybe, I don't know, fall off of a roof, get punched into a wall that collapses, get hit by a car, whatever it may be, you might want to work with the costume designer ahead of time and be like, hey, in this scene, let's make sure our character has a nice loose jacket, or let's make sure that the pants are kind of baggy so that we can put pads in there, or, You know, like just we don't want to see a lot of skin on this one because we want to be able to pad up and protect our actor.
Yeah, Tommy, you mentioned the fact that you could throw a punch and literally be a foot and a half, behind somebody before contact. I did a fight scene with good old Wesley Snipes in something called Hard Luck, and he was supposed to be hitting my character in the back of the head with a saw handle, and he was, like you said, about a foot and a half behind me. And the reason why it looks believable is because it sounds believable because in post production they put in an effect of a sound of that collision of the saw handle to the back of a skull. And then B is the depth perception. Even with the great cameras that we have, the human eye kind of sees things three-dimensionally, but a movie image is typically two-dimensional. So when you film something, it's an eye trick. It's a camera trick that causes the human eye and brain to see things differently than they are. So that's something that filmmakers can use to their advantage.
Padding is everything. Angles are everything. And a lot of the best cinematographers will already know this, but even some of the newer cinematographers, believe it or not, even as a director, when I'm on set, you know who I usually defer to for the best camera angle, Mike?
The cinematographer or the lighting guy, or
I'm usually going to the stunt coordinator. I'm going
Okay.
right to that stunt coordinator and I'm saying, hey, so-and-so, where is the best place for the camera to be? And I think a lot of directors are probably reluctant to take that advice. It's almost like when you're golfing, if you ask your caddy, like, well, hey, which club should I use here? Well, you should listen to your caddy because your caddy's probably been on the course more times than you have. He sees people play this course all the time. So asking your caddy what club to use might be effective. Whereas if you have an ego, you might be like, fuck that caddy. I know what goddamn club to use. I don't need to ask you. And, we've all been there as a director. It's like, you got this vision and everybody knows that it's your vision and you want to tell that story with the camera the best you can. But it's okay to ask for advice. It's okay to ask the guy who films fights every weekend or every day, hey, where should we put the camera? Because they know that's the reality. Because keep in mind, too, just like a magician doesn't want to give up the trick, a stunt coordinator doesn't want you to make his fight scenes look like shit either. So the stunt coordinator is going to give you the optimal angle to make his work or her work look like it's top notch.
Yeah, I think you tapped into something bigger than Tommy, which is just a point that, and when I'm thinking about the strike and so forth, is that filmmaking, a lot of times the glory positions are the director, the writer, the producer, the actors, of course, but really it's a collaborative medium. Stunt coordinators, the grips, the lighting people, the cinematographer, editors, sound, everybody is part of that collaboration. So everybody's work really wants to, in the best case scenario, appear the best. And a lot of times these people, like stunt coordinators, are putting their trust in you as a director to give them the best possible shine, so to speak, the best possible look, because they're always looking for more work too. So if their stunt that they coordinated in your film looks really good, that gives them more opportunities to get more work with other people down the line too.
Yeah, it's a great partnership to have. I've been lucky. Let's segue into stunt coordinators. I've been very lucky in my career. I've worked with a couple of really talented coordinators my whole career, really. I've only had a couple as a director. Everybody, we've talked about Nick Principe on this show 100 times. Close friend of mine, but also just super talented and multidimensional. And aside from being a great actor, he's a great hand to have on set because he's a terrific stunt coordinator. He's done a ton of stunts. If you can name it, he's just about done it. And my first, several movies, Nick was the coordinator. And I'll never forget, we were doing the movie Almost Mercy, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later. We had this very elaborate scene that we shot. It was a fight scene where it was like 1-on-3, three guys ganging up on one guy, beating the crap out of him in the shower of a high school, like in the locker room. And I remember us trying to work through it and looking at the clock and my AD at the time coming up to me and be like, all right, we really want to try to get this whole scene shot before lunch. Okay, that's the goal. And meanwhile, it's like a 3-page scene with a bunch of fights that take place in a wet shower. So it's already like a hazardous environment. And I remember just like not panicking, but just kind of being like to Nick, like, shit, man, like, how are we going to do this? And he was very calm and he was just like, all right, look, we'll take it shot by shot. We're going to break it down. Just make sure we get coverage on every beat of the fight. You know, like this guy throws a punch, get a close up of that, turn it around, get a close up of that. So it's almost like every beat in the fight, you want to get two shots. You want to get a close up from one angle where we feature the person getting hit, and you want to turn it around and get a close up of the person who's throwing the punch. Sounds obvious, right? But a lot of people forget that shit. And if you're missing a piece, your fight's not going to cut together right in the editing room. So Nick was really calm and he just broke it down beat by beat. And we had an awesome fight scene. And I remember at the end of it, I was stressed out. I was like, man, that was fucking crazy. I don't know how we did that. And he's like, well, Tommy, he's like, you know, on a bigger show, we would have not only all day just to shoot this one shower fight, but we would have had a whole day prior where we weren't shooting. And I'd be just working with the actors so that they know exactly what they're doing when they arrive on set. We didn't have those luxuries. We're making a movie for $100,000 at the time. So you're not going to be able to afford to call everybody in ahead of time. So it's kind of fun because Nick said that to me probably, I don't know, that was like 10 years ago. And
Okay.
here we are on the collective, and I'm standing right next to Nick, and he's, you know, 6'6", so I'm looking up at him, and I'm like, "Hey, Nick, look at this. We're here on a prep day, rehearsing fights on a day we're not shooting. It only took us a goddamn decade, but looks like we made it."
Well, Nick, for the horror film fans, is Chrome Skull, I believe, in the Laid to Rest series. And so he definitely has a following there. He does have some adversaries in the Insane Clown Posse world, from what I understand. But Nick is a great guy. He actually did the stunt for me in a movie once where he took a hit by a car in the Mick and the Trick. And I saw Nick's professionalism and his courage. I mean, trust me, Tommy, I learned a lot about the courage of the stuntman by watching Nick Principe literally go up and over a car, you know, Jerry Lawler style. And I was very impressed by it. So, I mean, good to have a trusted companion who's a stuntman and a stunt expert and a fight coordinator. Definitely a good guy to have in your team.
Definitely. So Nick and I have had a lot of great missions together, but recently I started working with another stunt coordinator on the collective by the name of Anthony Huang. And Anthony's another real talent and a great guy to have in the industry. He works a lot here in New England, but you know, he works everywhere. He's doing stuff in New York all the time. And the cool thing about Anthony is he can do it on a big level. He can work on a massive show, or he can bring things down and figure it out and make it happen on a budget. You know, he's very flexible. And Anthony just has a ton of gear. I admire what we call in the business when you have gear. If you're it doesn't matter if you're a DP, it doesn't matter if you're a makeup artist, a props person, or whatever. It's called your kit. Your kit,
Okay.
KIT, kit is what you come with. The whole kit and caboodle. It's a kit. It's your tools. It's your shit. It's what you bring to the table when you show up on set. A lot of people will get extra money. They'll get a little bump. They'll get what's called a kit fee, where everybody knows, like, yeah, my day rate is X, but if you want me to come with all my toys, you're gonna have to pay my kit fee as well. And what you get with the kit fee is Anthony has enough pads and, you know, stunt gear and literally like giant crash pads that you could throw a person off of a roof and they could land on them and they wouldn't die. Those kind of pads. I'm not talking about a few fucking gym mats. He has the actual shit that you need to keep your stunt performers and your actors safe and in one piece on set. So Anthony's terrific to work with. We've said this a million times before, and it's not essential, right? Not everybody's going to be your friend. That's not, you know, we learned that lesson in kindergarten or whatever. Like, we got to be nice to everybody, but doesn't mean everybody's going to love you.
You know, play in the same sandbox, but you don't necessarily have to go home for cookies after school.
Exactly. But it is very nice when you can work with someone that you'd probably go out and get a coffee with, even if you weren't making a movie, you know? So it's nice to have a guy like Anthony around that, yeah, we can put our heads together and get the work done, but we can also laugh and bust balls and carry on with some good old fashioned film fellowship. So we love working with Anthony. and he also lit himself on fire on my last
Wow.
movie, which was one of the most courageous things I've ever seen. Not really a stage combat thing necessarily, so we're not going to spend too much time on that, but we did cover that in detail on our stunts episode. So if you go back and watch the stunts episode in our back episodes, the archives, you'll hear all about the day that Anthony lit himself on fire, which was pretty fucking awesome. So guys, let's just keep going along here. And we talked about pads are very important. We talked about the angles and everything else, rehearsing. This is just like a tip. This is just like something that you guys should have in the back of your head. If you ever find yourself on a set working with people and they ask you like, hey, are you comfortable doing this stunt? If you're not comfortable with it, say you're not fucking comfortable with it. Don't be forced into doing a stunt that you don't really feel safe or you don't really want to do just because, we all have that, I guess we could call it like the fear of the actor, thinking that like we're going to make that one false move that makes the producers or directors be like, hey, fuck this guy. Let's never call him again.
You'll never work in this town again, Danucci.
Yeah, and it's just like, what? You don't want to do this stunt? You're out of here. And it's like,
no, blacklisted, kid.
It's not going to happen. What's going to happen?
Back to washing tables in Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to tell you to hit the bricks. They're just going to get a stunt person to replace you for that one moment. I'll tell you a couple of really quick stories where that happened to me. One in particular, I'll probably just narrow it down to one. I was in a scene with Michael Madsen where Michael Madsen's character had to throw my character through a plate glass window. And I mean like a giant plate glass window, like, a 10-foot by 10-foot facade of a building type window. This was a fucking kind of a big stunt. And I think I've told this story on previous episodes, but I'll just make it quick. But basically, the idea was Madsen was going to grab me by the lapels, pull me into him, and check me right into this fucking glass wall. And I was going to crash through the wall and fall onto the pavement outside onto the sidewalk. And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do it. I'm like 20-something years old. I'm all fired up. I'm like, hell yeah, I could do this. The coordinator's like, we're going to pad you up. You'll have a back pad on. You'll go right through. And then, we'll clean all the glass off of you right away. Just close your eyes when you go through it and we'll clean all that glass off. Don't move. And I start getting a little nervous. I'm like, shit, did you say clean all that glass off my eye area? What? And I'm like, oh, geez. And then I say to myself, ooh, this is nerve wracking. And I must have looked nervous. Sometimes we can't help it. You could be the best actor in the world, but if you're really fucking nervous about something, you can't help it. And I was just sitting there. I had my nice little suit on. I'm maybe 21, 22 years old. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like looking nervous. And Jamie Alexander, who was the star of that movie, came up to me and she just said, she sits down and we didn't even really know each other very well. We maybe had we probably said 2 sentences to each other, hi and goodbye. She was always nice to me, but we weren't friends. It was just hi and goodbye. Nice seeing you. Nice working with you, whatever. So we hadn't talked. She comes up to me and she's like, are you really going to go through that window? They told me that you're doing the stunt. And, my macho bravado kicks in and I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. I'm just going to go through it and said it'd be pretty easy. And she looks me right in the eye and she goes, listen, if one little piece of glass slides the wrong way and cuts your face, you're not going to be very happy about that. And she basically said in a nice way, like, this is a lot more dangerous than you may think. That glass is fucking unpredictable. And yeah, you're going to go through back first, but like, who the fuck knows what's going to happen when it all cascades around your face? And she's like, just don't do it. She's like, you don't need to do it. She was like, and Jamie was extremely experienced. She had been in the business for many years. She still is a very successful actor. And she was like, no. We have stunt performers for that kind of thing. Like, don't even risk cutting your face or anything. And I got up and I walked over to the director and I said, yeah, you know what? I'm going to bow out of this one. And they was like, no problem. Okay, yeah, we'll have so-and-so do it. And the stunt person came in and look, when you watch the movie, you could never even fucking tell it's not me. So it's not a big deal. We get a close-up of Madsen grabbing me and pulling me in. And then we cut to the outside of the building and you see a wide shot of a body going through and crashing. And I'll never forget when I actually witnessed it, like as an observer, the guy going through the window,
Right.
it took like, I'm not kidding, 4 or 5 really good checks to even go through the window. Madsen kept pushing him through, and the guy was just bouncing off the fucking window. Those windows are a lot harder than you think, like a thick exterior glass window. So finally, like on the 5th try, boom, he goes through the window. And I know what you're thinking. A lot of people at home are probably thinking, like, well, isn't it candy glass?
Sugar
No,
glass. Yeah, sugar
no, it's
glass.
not. When you do these big, like massive window effects, like where someone's going through a window, they just use the thinnest pane of glass. It's just a very thin pane of actual glass designed to, it's tempered so that you're not going to get a massive shard jabbing into your neck. It's designed to break into a bunch of tiny little pieces. So finally, on the 5th try, boom, the guy goes through the fucking window. And I just remember thousands of tiny pieces of glass being just all over his face, his body, his shirt. And they were like, don't move, don't move. And someone had to come in like and literally let's like individually like pick all the glass off of his face. And he just had to like lie there still. And they were like, I think they had like a hair dryer. So they were like blowing it off, like a leaf blower kind of thing, like blowing the fucking glass. And I remember looking at that and just being like, oh man, thank God I didn't do that one. Didn't need to do it. So again, that was a long roundabout story, but the bottom line is if you don't feel comfortable, don't try to be a tough guy just for the sake of doing some stunt.
That was the film where you played Michael Madsen's son, I believe, and that was
No, I was actually a detective. I did 2 Madsen movies, and this one is a movie called Lucy's with Peter
okay.
Facinelli and Jamie Alexander. And I was a detective, and I was like his young detective assistant, which kind of segues into our next story, which I guess the set of Lucy's was cursed in the sense that there were a couple of incidents that happened with stage combat. So we're going to talk about a good friend of both Mike's and mine. He's no longer with us. He's passed on, but he's kind of a legend in this New England film market. But Billy Vigent, shout out to Billy V up in the sky. Billy V was a really great guy, talented actor, had a great look, one of those character actors that you could kind of just plug in either as a good guy or even as like a wily cop. Like he had the ability to kind of do a little bit of he could be good, or he could be a good guy or a bad guy. He could be a little friendly or he could be a little mean, depending upon how you wanted to use him. So in this particular case, he's playing the heavy. He's playing the kind of guy that, a leg breaker, the kind of guy who, like, if you don't pay up, this guy's going to kick your ass. Because Billy was a big strapping dude, even well into his, later in life, into his 50s and 60s. He was always the kind of guy that you'd see and you'd be like, this 60-year-old guy could probably beat the shit out of me if he had to.
I think he played high school and college football, I believe.
Yeah, Billy was a great athlete and a bit of a brute size wise. So Billy's in this scene. He looks great, and he's tuning up Peter Facinelli in the scene. And Peter Facinelli, handsome guy, right? One of the more handsome guys out there. I always thought Peter was a good looking dude and a great guy. I had a lot of fun working with him on this movie, Lucy's. I was like I said, I was in my early 20s at the time, and he was probably in his early 30s or mid 30s, and he treated me like a peer. Like he didn't treat me like some little piece of shit kid that was running around set. He treated me like a cast member,
Sure.
and I respected that. So Peter's in the scene where he's got to get punched in the face. And again, we always talk about angles. Know your angle and know your space. Spatial distance is everything. Meaning, like, I don't need to get close to you. Mentally, in your mind, as the actor, you might think like, oh, this is going to look bullshit if I don't like just skim his face. So you might end up getting a little too close. You don't need to. Because if you're like coming, like, look, I'll even show you on the camera. If you're coming at the camera and you turn, like the act of turning and pulling back your punches and snapping them, that's what makes the illusion happen. You don't really need to be close. But Billy got a little too close. And I remember we were filming the scene and you just could hear Peter like go, ooh, and like he was like, cut, hold on, cut. We called a cut. Peter like does one of these, and there's just blood everywhere. He bloodied up his nose. And thank God, like I remember Billy said, he like took me aside and he was like, thank God I like just grazed him. Like I didn't even really connect too much. He's like,
Right.
because if I really hit him, like his fucking face would have caved in potentially. So I remember when that happened. I remember going outside and I remember seeing Peter like nursing his nose, like with the fucking, he had like a paper towel or whatever and kept looking at it. And somehow, miraculously, like it didn't break. He didn't break the nose and it didn't even really swell up too bad. I think we ended up taking like a day, like we had to stop production for like one day. And I
Well,
think like the next day it was a little swollen. Probably didn't stop production. We probably just like shifted the schedule and filmed things that didn't have Peter in it. Um, but yeah, Peter needed a day or two to kind of let that swelling come down. And there's a case where like, man, I remember that being like one of those eggshell moments because here we are, maybe, it's a 15-day shoot and this is like day 2 or 3 and your lead actor who's this really handsome guy with a fucking perfect nose, perfect profile, and he just got it clipped by a 285-pound brute of a man. So that could have been a fucking nightmare. And just another example of, man, know your angles, know your spatial distance.
well, to give credit, like you just did, to Peter Facinelli himself, just that movie meant a lot to him, I'm sure. And he wasn't going to be a diva or ask for special attention. He was one of the boys, as they say, and gritted his teeth and got through it. But we're in a business, Tommy, where a lot of times things can go either way when you're dealing with the human factor. If that had been somebody else or somebody in a bad mood or not as forgiving or understanding, it might have been a totally different story. But luckily for everyone involved, Peter was a good sport about it. And he knew, as everyone did, that Billy V was such a great guy. He wasn't looking to hurt him or anybody. So cheers to both Peter and Billy and yourself for handling that situation as best as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. If you get some cranky guy who just got his nose busted on set in front of everybody, you easily could have gotten a phone call from the manager, from the agent, calling the production saying, "What the fuck are you guys doing over there? My
Right.
actor's got a busted nose. What kind of fucking stunt coordinator did you hire? What kind of fucking stunt performers did you hire? This is unsafe. This is an unsafe working environment. He's not coming to work tomorrow until you can fucking guarantee his safety." It could have been bad. So you're right. It could have gotten pretty nasty, and it didn't. We had talked about this scene earlier, the Almost Mercy shower scene, which sounds a lot sexier than it really is. It's not sexy at all. It's a scene where we have 3 football playing bullies ganging up on one actor who's kind of playing like I don't want to say the outcast. How about that? He's the outcast of the school, played by Jesse Dufault. Shout out to Jesse. And it was a scene where Jesse had to be he's basically wearing a towel, just got out of the shower, and he's attacked by these kids who throw a bottle of piss at him.
Oh
They
boy.
piss in like a shampoo bottle and chuck the bottle at him. He catches it, and the piss just goes all over him. And he
Yeah.
fucking snaps, and he goes ham and just attacks these 3 bullies. And you have a 3-on-1 where normally when you're thinking like 3-on-1, you're thinking like, well, the 1 is clearly at the disadvantage. But in this case, it was more of like one of those scenes where the 3 were like, oh shit, like we might have crossed the line. This guy wants to kill us. Because as they say, in a fight, it's usually the guy willing to die who's going to win. And maybe those bullies weren't willing to die in that moment, but this kid who just got a bucket of piss on him, he's like, well, fuck this. I'm ready to die. I hope you guys are too. So basically, you could see the fear in the bully's eyes, and Jesse charges at them. And I remember, again, this was probably, I was new at the time, and we shot a scene where like the floor was wet. We had the showers running, and then I think we turned them off. And we probably should have shot all of the dry floor stuff first because the floor was wet. Jesse's charging at these bullies, and he slipped. And I remember thinking like, oh, fuck, he's going to slip and crack his fucking teeth. And we're going to be in a lot of trouble. We're going to have an injured actor, and I'm going to have to write that one into the script somehow.
Yeah.
But actually, like Jesse kind of athletically like slipped and used it, as they say, use it. He used it, and like he used the slip as part of his momentum into like throwing the first punch and tackling this entire group of guys. So it's one of those things where like sometimes you luck out and you can do all the planning in the world, but if you make a couple of little mistakes and you're like, oh shit, we forgot to probably shouldn't have a wet floor when we have a bunch of guys fighting on it. We got through that one and nobody got injured. And it just shows you that like it's so fucking unpredictable when you're doing these scenes. Anything can fucking happen. So that was a case where, luckily nothing bad went down, but it could have.
Well, I think there is a thing, Tommy, that it makes you believe in like the movie gods, or the movie gremlins overseeing your production, either for the good or for the mischievous. Things can go wrong, but sometimes things go right and you get lucky. I don't know if you want to check the comments, but we do have a bunch of comments, Tommy. People have been tuning
I
in.
haven't checked them out. I haven't. I've been my guys. I've got a new show out now, which I was going to talk about at the end, but I'll tell you now. It's called Rushmore. It's a top 4 podcast. It's actually not. We're not calling it a podcast. It's a top 4 show, and I've been working on that through StreamYard. And I had a different setting up because I got my settings mixed up. And this morning when I went to go do this show, I still had the Rushmore stuff programmed in.
Yeah.
So long story short, Stephen E says, let's get the fights going. What's up, Stephen? How you doing, brother? Oh, thank you. He subscribed to the new show. Appreciate that, brother. What's up, Kim? It has been a busy summer and it's been a fast summer, man. I can't believe it's already like August 22nd. Are you kidding me? Florian, what's up, Florian? I don't know that we've had you on here before.
I think that's a new commenter, perhaps a new watcher, but thanks for checking in, Florian. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, Steven, we got some theme music. We're moving on up. Maybe we'll get a nice opening soon. Free lawn service for the year. Seriously, man, the poor kid. I mean, I feel bad. He's gonna have to pay probably $500-600 for that window. I had fight training on grown-ups too. So much fun. That's awesome. That must have been a blast. But yeah, it's fun to be confident in what you're gonna do when it's something physical like that. Kim says the collective was great. Oh, thank you so much. Congratulations, Kim. Thank you for being a part of it. Kim was at one of the featured tables at the big event in the big event scene at the end of the movie where I don't want to give it away, but something pretty crazy happens at Kim's table, and she's right there front and center. Ariana, what's up, Ariana? Can't wait to hear all about the fighting. Let's get ready to rumble. Chad, what's up, brother? Good to see you, Chad. Yes, continuity is everything. And you see that a lot of times too. It's a good point, Chad. Sometimes when you're watching a fight scene, you ever see in a fight scene, like, a guy will be like, and these are little details that you really only notice if you're an editor or something like that, but in one shot, the guy will be like in a headlock. And then in the other shot, he won't be in the same spot. Like they kind of moved a little bit. Or, in one shot, this happens a lot too on these bigger fight scenes. Like in one shot, a guy will have like a mark on his face. And then like a couple shots later, the mark won't be there. And then a couple shots later, the mark is back. Because a lot of times things are shot out of sequence. And sometimes you're desperate for a shot. And the editor says, well, fuck, I'd rather have this shot and have a little error than no shot at all. Scott, what's up, brother? Welcome on back. Good to see you. All right, so let's get into another fun story about fighting. So I did a movie called Black Water with Jean-Claude Van Damme, the legend himself, JCVD. And let me tell you something. This was one of the most fun I've had on a movie set. It was an action movie. I remember I got into really good shape for this movie. I was training really hard. Like it was like, oh man, this is like, it was Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme. It was like a real like movies for guys who like movies.
Right.
So I was all ready to go. And I remember I had to do this scene where I'm firing an actual machine gun, and the machine gun has blanks, but it's not, it's not anything to be fucked with. They're actual, rounds, like shell casings are ejecting out of the gun. And we had a mini training course with it. And it was all by the numbers, and that's kind of what fascinated me. Just the fact that it was like, this stuff doesn't happen by accident, guys. It's a big fucking coordinated dance where it's like the guy would be like, and we were in Alabama. So, he had one of these accents and he kind of said, all right, step 1, get the gun up. You fire on 1, 2 shots here. I call out 2, you run to the barrel, you duck down. I call out 3, you pop up, you fire 3 shots and you duck down. I call 4, you pop up, you fire 2 rounds, and you run to that crate right over there. So like I'm thinking in my head and I'm all fucking nervous. I'm like, all right, 1, I go to here, pull up the gun, fire 2 shots. He says 2, I run to the barrel, duck. Then I pop up on 3 and fire. And then there's the fun part. Now, guys, they're firing at us these things called Zerks. There's a Zerk, which is short for the chemical compound zirconium, which, if you didn't know, zirconium, if you were to like really throw zirconium at the wall, it pops, it explodes, it makes a little spark. So they have these little paintballs with zirconium in them. They put those paintballs in a traditional paintball gun, and they shoot them at us in the fucking scene behind us so that it can emulate a ricochet up against the wall because we're getting shot at, right? So he's like, all right, step 1, you shoot. Step 2, you run to the barrel. Now you want to duck there because on step 2, I'm going to be shooting these Zerks over your head. And if it hits you in the eye, it will blind you. And I just go, okay. That one stuck out in my head. So I remember thinking, like, all right, and you know, keep in mind that he's shouting out, like, because we can edit this shit later. He's like, all right, and action. All right, 1, boom, boom, boom. 2, run to the barrel. And that's when I'm like, all right, 2, we duck because the motherfucker's shooting at us. Duck. And then I can like hear and see the ping, 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 ping over my head. I'm waiting. And then he's like, 3. And on 3, I pop up and I fire and I advance. And I just remember thinking, like, man, you better get your fucking numbers right because nobody wants to get hit with a goddamn flaming ball of zirconium
In their eye.
in the fucking eyeball.
It'll blind you. Great.
If it hits you in the eye, it will blind you. I was like, oh, thank you for being
Good thing I've got another eye. I've got 2 eyes, so you got 2.
Yeah, not like, well, I was like, hey, maybe the soldiers have like safety goggles in this scene. Maybe? No? Can't do that? All right. So that one was funny. So I guess the moral of that story is like a lot of stage combat has to do with following them rules, man. Like you're going to get numbers and beats, and if you don't follow them, someone could get severely fucking injured, and it could be you if you're not lucky.
Yeah, Tommy, it just makes me think that these guys that do stunts, you know, full time, they are a different breed. I mean, I think our buddy Nick Principe's kind of got 1 foot in that ocean, maybe 2. But I think if you think about the Fall Guy TV show, or even you know, the character that Brad Pitt played in the Quentin Tarantino movie, you know, was it Hollywood?
They're adrenaline junkies, Mike.
Yeah, they're
straight up adrenaline junkies.
And it's interesting because how they feed off of adrenaline is maybe how a typical actor feeds off of adulation or being in the limelight or the thrill of performance. But the stunt double is more about the adrenaline rush and the can I get through this thing alive? You know.
Well,
and,
you know what, man? Look, let's face it. On a movie set, the stunt performer is pretty fucking cool. Like they're the cool guys. They're the specialists. They're the guys that get called in to do the shit that nobody else has the balls to do. So when it comes down to it, there's a little swagger that comes with that, man. I mean, you see the stunt guys, and I'm not saying this to poke fun at them. You can tell right away just about like, oh, that guy's a stunt guy. Like you can tell they got a swagger. They're a little cool looking. They got a cool jacket. They got a little swagger in their gait when they walk around. You know what I mean? Like, they're a different breed. They really are. So shout out to all the wonderful stunt performers that are willing to do the shit that, frankly, you couldn't fucking pay me to do.
I was actually hired to be a stunt guy for 1 day, Tommy, on Brotherhood, the TV series, and it was not a particularly good experience for me. But I kind of appreciated what stunt guys do, and I kind of I did that job as a favor to our friend Annie Mulhall at LDI Casting. I think she was in a bind because no one else was really available. And I learned the hard way, like stunt work is not easy.
It's not easy, and it's kind of thankless in the sense that, you know, you could do the most phenomenal, amazing stunt, and nobody really knows your name, you know? And I mean, they sacrifice so much. That's why I really believe, and I'm pretty sure this isn't this is still the case, there's no Academy Award for the best stunt of the year. And to me, I really think there should be. They should give an Oscar out to the best stunt of the year, greatest stunt. Like, why the fuck not? And I think that the person who actually does the stunt and the person who's the coordinator should both receive a statue when they have the greatest stunt of the year. I was just watching the most recent James Bond movie, and there's this scene where the guy's on a fucking motorcycle, and he literally flies up a fucking staircase and jumps it and boom, lands it and keeps going. And my buddy I'm watching with, he's like, that was a real practical stunt that they did. I'm like, God damn, man, like how the fuck? So it's like, to me, it's like this is Oscar worthy shit because it adds so much value to your film.
I agree with you. I think there was something else we said last week or the week before that was also like a category that goes overlooked for
animal
Oscars.
trainers.
Animal trainers, yeah.
Mike just wants to give a fucking Oscar to a cute puppy. You picture him on the stage. He doesn't know where he is. He's a dog, but he's standing in front of a goddamn Oscar that people have worked their whole lives to get, and he's like licking it. Okay, so let's keep it moving. This is a quick funny story, but injuries, guys, injuries. That's like a real thing. And I mean pre-existing injuries going into a stunt. I did a movie once called Self-Storage with Eric Roberts and Michael Berryman. And Michael Berryman was coming off of a rotator cuff surgery. He just had rotator cuff surgery, like, I don't know, a month or two before. And anybody who knows, my father had rotator cuff surgery like a little over a year ago. That's like a fucking 4 or 5 month recovery minimum. Like it's a very fucking serious thing. You're literally reconnecting your fucking shoulder. So here he is like a few weeks off of the surgery and he shows up on set and he's just like, oh yeah, guys, by the way, I have limited range of motion in my shoulder. So there's certain things I won't be able to do as written in the script. Not for nothing, and I love Michael, and if you're watching this, please don't take this the wrong way, but I wish we had known that before you came to set, because I would have rewritten the fight scenes and changed them a little bit. So we had this one fight scene where Eric and Michael are doing battle, and it was a simple block where Michael comes in with a knife attack. He's trying to stab Eric, and Eric blocks him and, punches him or whatever. Man, that one little simple block turned into a fucking nightmare on set because, look, I'm not saying Eric was trying to go too hard, but when you're doing stunts, nobody wants to throw what's called a popcorn punch. That's a term that they use in the wrestling business where it's like in wrestling, you don't want to get caught throwing a bullshit punch. Guys have said, as a Roddy Piper quote, he goes, I'd rather have another wrestler knock my teeth out than have to sell a popcorn punch. Like he's saying, it embarrasses the wrestlers. If you miss by this much and they have to sell it, they want you to get in there. Whereas, in this case, I feel like Eric didn't want to look like he was throwing like a half-assed block because Michael was like, hey, when you throw that block, can you kind of go easy on it? And Eric's like, okay, I'll try my best. Action's called, and sure enough, boom, Shotokan block. And I remember watching Michael's shoulder, his bad shoulder, just go like, and I remember thinking like, oof, like that windmill type motion on a fucking freshly repaired shoulder.
Not good.
And Michael just made this like guttural, like you could tell like he was hurt, very much hurt. And we had to shut down for an hour. Michael had to walk around. He was pissed at Eric. He was upset. He's like, I just fucking told you I had shoulder surgery. What the fuck did you do that for? So again, there's so many factors that go into this shit when you watch the movies that you would just, that's kind of what that story doesn't even really have much of a moral, but it's just funny when you watch these movies, you just never fucking know what's going on behind the scenes. And that always kind of makes it fun.
Well, Tommy, I think it does have a lesson, if not a moral, which is there's so many conflicting issues here. You have the actor who obviously wants to work, so maybe he's not sharing fully the extent of his injuries, and maybe he's not fully appreciating the amount of stunts that are required or how much the stunts are necessary to sell this whole movie. Then you have the other actor who, in Eric's case, I'm sure Eric was trying to be obliging to him, but maybe Eric heard him but didn't fully comprehend the level of discomfort the guy was in. And I think just part of it, Tommy, is just instincts. Like if you and I are sparring partners in a boxing, match, and we're used to going kind of 90% or 75% or whatever it is, and then you say, hey, Mike, can you go 40% today because my shoulder's, roughed up. I can say it. I can say that I'm going to do that, and I can even want to do that. But when the body has its own set of instincts, And when you have instincts to do something like you've done in 1,000, or in Eric Roberts' case, all the movies he does, tens of thousands of times he's blocked a punch. I think it was just instincts. So I kind of feel like there's fault to go around in that situation. And I think for me, the lesson, if not a moral, is as a director in this scenario, you really are kind of balancing different agendas, different egos. Sometimes when people get injured, it's not just their physical body that's hurt, it's their feelings that are hurt. Berryman could have felt unappreciated, like, hey, doesn't my body or my comfort mean anything to you guys? And you're like, well, yeah, it does, but we didn't know about that until blah, blah, blah. So these are things that people don't think about when they say, I want to be a film director, or I want to write a movie, or I want to be an actor. Nobody thinks about this type of stuff. This is the
human condition, Mikey. The human condition,
the human factor. We call it the human factor. Yeah, the human condition, the human factor. And I was going to say, this is when you get your fingernails dirty and you actually get to work, and you're not just thinking about stuff in philosophical terms, but real life experience.
Yeah, and this is where you have to, as a filmmaker, use that talent management part of your brain, where it's like, yes, you're here to be an artist, but you also almost have to think of yourself like talent relations, where it's like, okay, I got to keep everyone happy, because if people aren't happy, they do a shit job and they don't want to fucking be there. And if somebody doesn't want to be there, they're going to phone everything in and just be like, this is the 40th movie I did this year. I don't give a fuck. Get me on the fucking plane. And we don't want that. So let's keep it moving. By the way, Mike, you said something that my old football coach used to say. If we were in practice and somebody got the better of another guy, one guy got the better of him, let's say we were running and someone gets laid out, they'd usually like pretend that they were a little hurt after, and they'd shake their shoulder out or something. And I remember my coach would say, are you hurt, or are your feelings hurt? Like screaming at the kid, basically saying, like, you're not hurt. You're just sad because that guy just made you look like shit. And now you're trying to pretend that you're fucking hurt. So are you hurt, or are your feelings hurt?
Do you remember the name of the coach by any chance?
Oh yeah, Coach Storr. I bet you if you said that now to a kid, you'd probably get fired or something. They'd be like, you're not being mindful of his feelings.
Coach Storr?
Yeah, Storr. Storre. Storr.
That's a great Storr.
Dude, he was a classic badass, like relic from the 80s football coach. Like when you look up football coach in the dictionary, this is the man you want to lead you into battle. So I respect him.
I like him already.
Yeah, he was old school as they come, and he was also my gym teacher. So if you're watching this, Coach Storr, shout out to you. All right, so let's keep it moving. Johnny and Clyde had a really great fight scene that I was really excited about, because it had Tommy Dreamer in it. It featured Tommy Dreamer, Nick Principe, my friend Tom Glenn is up in that scene, who is also a great stunt performer. And the great thing about this scene was I didn't have a lot of time to prep Johnny and Clyde in terms of like rehearsal time, but I had Nick with me, and Nick is a faithful buddy. He's go with pal. So Nick and I were able to get in the space like days in advance and methodically plan out this one fight scene where Nick's character, the butcher, AKA, he's like a sort of like a Viking. He basically takes on like 6 guards at this like casino, and he fucks them all up. And that was a cool scene. The reason why I'm mentioning that is, again, we had the time to prep, and we sort of cherry picked our actors. We sprinkled in the right performers, where we had a guy like Tommy Dreamer, who, we did a whole episode on Tommy Dreamer. Great actor, but really coming from that pro wrestling background, I mean, you can't find a better stunt person. Like that's literally what they do every fucking night, 300 nights a year. They're doing stunts that just happen to be in the middle of a ring. The squared circle, Mikey.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the wrestlers, as we've said before, have such great attitudes about stunts, because when they're on a film set, it's almost like they're getting paid more for less stunt work than they were when they're in the wrestling world. So typically the wrestlers like Tommy Dreamer, Kevin Nash, and Johnny Nitro, they all seem to appreciate working in these films.
Well, I think it comes down to what we said about stunt performers earlier, when we're like, there's a little swagger. There's a little bit like, yeah, I know. none of you want to do this, and I not only can do it, but I want to do it. Like I don't give a fuck. Like that kind of style of bravado. It's very easy there for a wrestler to have that because it's like, wait, you're gonna put a pad on me? Like I remember one time I did a stunt with Mike Bennett, who's doing really well right now. He's a great wrestler. He's wrestling in AEW, and Mike Bennett has to do this scene where he gets shot and he throws himself back and does a really bad, like we call that a back bump, if you will, flat back bump in the wrestling world, you'd call it, where you're just kind of landing completely back with, it's like a trust fall, but nobody's there to fucking get you, kind of a thing. And I remember us telling him, all right, we're going to put a gator pad on your gator back, which a gator back is basically just like used in motocross a lot of times. It's like one of those motocross back pads. And I remember me giving him the pad and be like, here, put this on. And he was like, what's this for? And I'm like, well, you're going to crash onto the floor backwards. He goes, I get to wear a pad? He's like, oh, I'm not used to this. This is great. I got a pad. Awesome. And he's like, I'm going to really go for it now. And I remember he did it was one of the best, just flat back bumps in a movie that I've ever seen. He gets shot in the chest twice and just fucking goes for it. So I love working with wrestlers. And again, I mentioned that scene in Johnny and Clyde just because it was an example where I get to work with a few guys that were all very fucking capable. And it's nice when you kind of have that. There's no weak links in the bunch where you're like, how are we going to do this with this guy? So that worked out really nice. Mike, the next one I want to talk about, maybe you can, from your perspective, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we did a whole episode on it. But let me hear your perspective on the Collective and some of those Mercedes Moné knife fights.
I just thought that scene is great, and I would really recommend that people check out the Collective to see what I consider one of the better fight scenes of the last 10 or 15 years. Is Tyrese Gibson and Mercedes Moné have this awesome fight scene. Maybe 50 to 60% of the way through the movie, but I mean, watch the movie and you'll find it'll be there. But I found it to be very intense, and Mercedes is actually a New Englander at heart. She got her come up in the New England Championship Wrestling with Sheldon Goldberg, and I think she was trained by Brian Fury, and of course she was a WWE champion many times over, and she's been a champion in Japan now. So, and Tyrese Gibson from the Fast and the Furious. I mean, these are two real heavyweights in the fight scene.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun working on that one. And I mentioned this on the Collective episode, so I won't go into it much. But just watching Mercedes digest the stunt performance and work with the coordinator and get her beats down. Remember those beats I was talking about? All the numbers that you got to follow. She just was able to watch it once and repeat it, almost like with with mime-like accuracy to just kind of repeat that shit. So she was awesome to work with, and I really hope I get to make another movie with her. So yeah, guys, this is really kind of, in closing, to wrap it up, a big part about fight combat is space, knowing your space, making sure that even if I extend all the way, am I going to hit this person? No. And it's as simple as that. I've literally just seen the actors stand and okay, so if I go all the way out, I'm not going to hit anyone. Space, angles, and remember, if you're not comfortable, if it doesn't feel right, if it gives you what I like to call nervous belly, bail out. Nobody's going to fire you. You're not going to go on some list of people that will never work again. Don't do anything you're not comfortable doing. And, have fun with it too. I mean, it's a rare chance to be in there and mixing it up. I mean, we all everyone's had fantasies of, being in that Rocky moment or having that moment where, you get to do something really unusual and exciting and action-packed. So embrace all of that. And a lot of times the situations that you find yourself in are so fucking crazy that you don't really have to act much because you really are kind of nervous. So you can kind of use some of that. And also, this will kind of segue into next week's episode. A lot of stage combat is working with props too, and knowing how to use a prop, knowing how to, my goddamn phone's ringing. Hang on a second.
This is a good time to check out MikeMessier.com, everybody, as Tommy is getting another professional phone call. Hey, buddy, how you doing there, pal?
That was my dear friend Theo Rossi, my co-host on Rushmore. So I'm going to jump on that in a minute, and we're going to get going. Mike, were you prepping something? Were you promoting?
No, I was
something?
just plugging my website, MikeMessier.com, and of course, the One Pro Wrestling and Sports Fan YouTube channel. One Mike Messier Artist is my new art channel, and One Mikey Messier or One Mike Messier for my film reviews. And very interesting topic here today, Tommy. I think fight scenes are, along with animals, like we covered a few weeks ago. These are kind of the unrecognized, elements of filmmaking that are very important.
The unsung heroes, Mike. So we talked about it. Like a lot of these things have to do with props. That's what I was talking about before. Fighting with a knife, fighting with a gun, hitting someone with the butt of a rifle. And a lot of times those props are going to be specially made and designed so that they're safe. They look great on camera, but they are by no means real or harmful. So next week, we're going to be talking all about props. And we're not talking about giving flowers to our people that we love. We're talking about the actual props, like some unique props and how to work with props. And if you're a filmmaker, some of the things to be thinking about way in advance about props, because guys, I've been fucked over so many times on movies thinking that a prop is just going to be there the way I have it in my head, thinking that the, people that I'm working with must know exactly what I'm talking about when they maybe don't always, and you got to explain it. So we're going to talk all about props next week. And guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Tom DiNucci Film, and also subscribe to Rushmore Channel. That's just at Rushmore Channel. Like I said, guys, what we're doing on Rushmore is we're doing every episode a top 4 breakdown where myself, co-host Theo Rossi, and co-host Demetrius Steer will basically do a round robin. For example, episode 1, we did breakfast cereal. So we just do a round robin where it's like, all right, let's hear your top 4. Theo will tell us, give a cereal. I'll give a cereal. Demetrius gives a cereal. We chat in between. We discuss. We argue. We make our points. And then we want you to drop down your Mount Rushmore of whatever it is we're talking about down below. And we want to get some fun pop culture conversation going. Remember, this one's wide open. This is just a film podcast in the sense that we try to keep this on film. This is all different stuff, guys. We're talking music, sports, just pop culture. If it can be argued, discussed, talked about, we're gonna rank it. So we appreciate you checking out Rushmore. The first episode is up now, and we also have a Patreon page. We're really pushing that thing out there. So thank you for everyone who already has subscribed. Thank you for everyone who's watched with us along today. Kim says the final scene turned out great. Thank you, Kim. Ariana says stunt fighters and stunt coordinators sure deserve more recognition. They do. Nobody even can you name one? I know this sounds horrible, but aside from the people that I worked with that I mentioned on this show, I couldn't name one stunt performer or one stunt coordinator in the industry. And it's kind of sad. But a cute puppy accepting an award is not sad. And that is a great way to close out the show. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Have an awesome week. And we'll see you Tuesday to talk about props on And Action, episode 49. Thanks,
59.
guys. 59. Good Lord. Good Lord.